On a crisp fall morning, long, long ago, in a land that's now forgotten, a merchant whistled happily as he saddled his horse. He was off to meet a ship, bringing him crates of precious ivory and Chinese silk. "When I sell them, we shall be rich," he told his daughters, "and I'll bring back gifts for each of you." "A new gown, father," cried Edwina, his oldest. "She has gowns," whined Sybil, his middle daughter. "Bring me a gown, and a cape of green silk, and a hat covered with parrot feathers." "Enough," cried their father. "You'll both have gowns and more." Then turning to his youngest, he said, "But you, Beauty, always so shy, what shall I bring for you?" Beauty blushed and handed him his cloak. "There's nothing I really need, father. Just come home quickly and safely." "There must be something," insisted her father. "Well," she said, "I'd love to have a rose, father, if it's not too much trouble." "What a ninny," jeered her sisters. "She wants a rose." "A rose it will be," said the merchant. He waved goodbye and galloped off. But when he got to the port, he learned that the ship had been wrecked in a storm. His ivory and silk lay at the bottom of the sea. "I can't believe it," he said to himself. "I invested everything. Now I'm penniless." Stunned and empty-handed, he started for home. With evening, snow became sleet, and deep in the woods, he realized he'd lost his way. Then, through the storm, he glimpsed a faint light. He spurred his horse toward it. Suddenly, the wind stopped. He looked around and found himself in the peaceful warmth of a moonlit garden before a glowing palace. Amazed, he left his horse and climbed slowly up the palace stairs. At the top, massive doors of bronze swung silently open, and he stared into a dazzling hall. "Hello? Hello? 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 Hello?" answered the echo. And then, except for the distant song of a nightingale, silence. In a great dining hall, he found silver platters of steaming roasts, wine in crystal carafes, and rare fruit in golden baskets. The table was set for only one. Hungry as he was, the poor man waited for someone to come and invite him to dine. But finally, when clocks all through the palace struck midnight, he could wait no longer. He sat and was about to help himself when he saw his glass slowly fill with wine. "The place is bewitched," he muttered, as food floated onto his plate. But hunger overcame fear, and he quickly ate his fill. Having eaten, he wandered into the next room and found a huge feather bed with silken sheets. He lay across it, intending to rest for just a moment, but fell into a deep sleep. Sunlight woke him, and he found himself wearing a fine linen nightshirt and saw his clothes laid out clean and dry. He dressed quickly and ran through the palace, calling, "Who is master here?" In the middle of a great empty ballroom, he stopped. "Thank you, dear host. Thank you for saving my life and for your generous hospitality." Outside, he was about to leave when he caught the scent of roses. He thought of his daughter, Beauty, and followed the scent through a maze of hedges. At the heart of the maze, he found a rose garden beyond imagination. The perfume was so Sweet and thick, it made him dizzy. He searched the garden until he found the most perfect rose. Then he reached out and picked it. At that moment, he heard a terrible, snarling roar. He fell to the ground, and when he dared to look up, a huge, ugly beast glared down at him with blazing eyes. "So," growled the beast, "I have saved your life. I have fed you and sheltered you, and you repay me by stealing what I love most in the world, my roses. You must die."
"Oh, please, dear sir."
"Don't call me sir, and don't argue. You must die."
"But I meant no harm. The rose was for my daughter, Beauty."
"You have a daughter?"
"I have 3 lovely daughters who depend on me, my lord."
"Call me beast! You have one chance to live. If one of your daughters willingly comes here to take your place, I will spare you."
"I would never sacrifice my daughters."
"Silence! You may go home, but at the end of 1 week, either you or one of your daughters must come to me. Now go."
At this, the merchant felt the garden spin around him, and he fainted dead away. When he opened his eyes, he was in his own bed. "Oh, Father," said Beauty, "we're so glad you're alive. Your horse galloped into the yard last night, and you fell off unconscious. This was in your hand." She held up the rose, and the merchant began to weep. And he told them his story from start to finish. "And so, in 1 week," he concluded, "I shall kiss you all goodbye for the last time." Beauty burst into tears.
"But Father," wailed Sybil, "without you, we'll starve."
"It's all her fault," snapped Edwina.
"She had to have a rose." "Yes," cried Sybil, "she should go to the beast in your place, Father. He'd give her roses."
"That's enough," cried the merchant. Beauty wept unconsolably. "They're right, Father, they're right. Please forgive me." The week passed slowly. On the final morning, Beauty was awakened at dawn by the clatter of hooves. She ran out to the yard, and there stood a magnificent white stallion with a golden saddle. "Beauty, no! I forbid it!" Her father's cries were drowned out by the thudding hooves. Beauty laid her cheek against the horse's neck. It was like riding the wind. When the horse stopped, the mist cleared and there was the palace, gleaming in the dewy sunlight. When the great bronze doors opened without a sound, she cried out, but she saw no beast. She saw no one. She entered a room full of sunlight, roses, and shelves of books. A book lying on the table slowly opened. And Beauty read, "Dearest Beauty, have no fear. You alone are mistress here. My palace, my gardens, my roses so sweet, all that I have is laid at your feet." "What does this mean?" cried Beauty. "What do you want of me?" But there was no answer. In the great dining hall, Beauty sat alone and waited. The table was set with roses and silver, and all her most favorite foods and cakes, but she touched nothing. Hours passed in eerie stillness. Then she noticed the smell of damp fur, and she heard the sound of breathing.
Good evening, Beauty,
Growled a rasping voice. When Beauty saw the beast, the earth seemed to drop from under her. She could never have imagined anything so monstrous. Good evening, sir.
Call me Beast. Did you come of your own choice, Beauty?
I did, Beast, to save my father.
And your room? Does it please you?
Oh, it's lovely, Beast. Thank you.
And Beauty, do you find me very ugly?
Beauty faltered and looked down. Her heart pounded. I cannot lie, Beast. I find you ugly.
Yes,
Sighed the Beast.
I am ugly. I am ugly, he roared. And I am a beast.
He glared at her. Then he covered his eyes, and after a moment said softly,
Beauty, may I sit with you each evening while you dine?
If you wish, said Beauty.
And Beauty, will you be my wife?
She closed her eyes. I cannot, Beast. I do not love you. The Beast groaned and turned away.
Good night, Beauty.
Beauty dreamt that night of a nightingale that flew in her window and perched on her bed. The birds sang a sweet, haunting song. Dearest Beauty, have no fear. You alone are mistress here. Trust your heart and not your eyes. Appearances are full of lies. Sunlight woke her. She dressed and wandered out among roses of every color and fragrance. She came upon a huge cage full of strange and wondrous birds. They looked at her and fluttered helplessly against the bars. I wish I could free you, she said. Then she thought of the beast and shuddered. Each evening he sat opposite her and asked about her day and watched her every move. His eyes, she thought, are not the eyes of a beast. They're so sad and full of mysteries. One night, feeling bold, she asked him, Beast, when will you kill me? He flinched and his eyes filled with horror.
Don't you know, Beauty? I would never harm you in any way. Please forgive me.
The next evening, as she waited for the beast to appear, there was a sudden flutter of wings, and a bird flew around and around the room. Then she saw the beast in the doorway, and quick as any cat, his arm shot out, and the bird was in his fist. Beauty could see it. It was a nightingale. Oh, please, she said, let it go. Beast, said Beauty, when will you set me free? She looked again into his eyes, and it was like looking into a forest. Behind a tree, she saw a fox. Here, the flash of some bird. There, a young fawn.
Beauty,
He said softly.
will you be my wife?
Dear beast, you know I cannot. She dreamed that night that she rode on the back of a wolf in the arms of a handsome stranger, a prince, through a fantastic forest of vines and flowers. Ahead of them flew the nightingale. Then she heard her father calling her. Beauty! Beauty! With his voice growing fainter and fainter. She woke and realized that it had been weeks since she'd thought of him. "Oh, Father," she said aloud, "if only I could see you." She glanced into the mirror by her bed, and there she saw her father. He looked old and sick. His lips moved, speaking her name. She burst into tears, and that evening when the beast appeared, she fell to her knees and said, "Please, beast, let me go to my father. I'm afraid he is dying." "Just for 1 week," said Beauty. "He needs me, and I miss him so."
I am only a beast, but I would die if you left me, Beauty.
She was awakened that night by mournful howls and the sound of something crashing through the woods. She left her bed and hurried through the moonlit maze until she stood in the rose garden. The beast stepped out of the black shadows.
Beauty, he said, you may go to your father for 1 week, but if you stay away longer, I will surely die. Take this ring, leave it on your table, and you will wake in your father's house.
"Oh, thank you, dear beast. Thank you." She took the beast's hand and kissed it and smelled the forest. She felt the coarse fur and the sharp claws.
I am ugly. I am a beast and a fool. But Beauty, my heart is good.
She looked into his eyes and almost wept. She saw such pain.
Beauty, will you be my wife?
"Dearest beast," she answered, but looked away and shook her head. Returning to her room, she put the ring on her table, and when she awoke, she was indeed at her father's house. "Beauty," cried her father, "you're alive! Oh, dear Beauty, you will make me well again." When she looked around, she saw the house was now richly furnished and handsome. "The morning you left," said her father, "I found this chest of gold on the doorstep, and no matter how much I spend, it's never empty." "And my sisters?" asked Beauty. "How are they?" "Thanks to the gold, they're both married now. I'll send for them." Edwina had married a handsome man who was vain and stupid, and Sybil had married a sly man who was mean and petty. The sisters were both miserable and secretly hoped that Beauty had been torn to shreds by the beast. When they saw her, radiant and looking like a princess, it was all they could do to hide their jealousy and rage. "Oh, we've missed you so," they said. "And I've missed you, but I can only stay 1 week. The beast said he would die if I didn't return."
The evil thing, said Edwina. Let him die. Yes, cried Sybil. Then his palace would be ours.
"And of course," added Edwina, "you would be free." "No," said Beauty. "He's been kind to me, and I promised." Her sisters stared at her.
You must be mad, they said.
Later, Edwina drew Sybil aside.
She wants all the wealth for herself, the greedy pig. Yes, said Sybil. Let's keep her here beyond the week. Either the beast will die, or he'll tear her limb from limb for being late.
"Perfect," said Edwina. So when the time came for Beauty to leave, her sisters rubbed their eyes with onion, and tears flowed.
Oh, please stay, blubbered Edwina. Please, sobbed Sybil. For father's sake.
Beauty smelled the onion and doubted her sister's tears, but her father wept too. She found herself staying another day, and then another, until the beast and his palace began to seem unreal, like some children's fairy tale. After 10 days, she had a dream. She was alone at the beast's table, but it was dark and cold. From far off, she heard a pitiful groaning. "Beast, is that you?" she asked. "Beast? Answer me. Forgive me for staying away so long." But she heard the groans growing weaker and weaker. "Don't die, Beast! Don't die!" cried Beauty, running frantically through the moonlit maze. Then she heard the nightingale singing. "Dearest Beauty, the hour is late. Happiness won't always wait. Run to the center of your own heart's maze. There find love for all your days." Beauty woke with tears streaming down her face. She put the beast's ring on her table and fell back asleep. When she woke again, she was in the beast's palace. She ran to the center of the maze. There in the rose garden, the beast lay sprawled in the moonlight, limp and motionless. "Oh, dearest beast," cried Beauty, "please live, please live, and marry me, and I'll never leave you again. I love you." At these words, the sun rose, and the great birdcage in the garden burst open. But Beauty barely noticed, for the beast had opened his eyes and looked at her. And as she watched his face, he was transformed into a young and handsome prince. "Dear Beauty," he said in a sweet voice, "your love has saved my life and changed me from a beast to a man who can love you in return." He embraced her, and they wept happily. "It was your heart I loved," said Beauty. "Your heart was always kind." "My heart was always yours," said the Beast Prince, as he took her hand and led her up the stairs of the palace. The doors swung open, and there stood Beauty's father and family. Over them hovered the nightingale who had brought them there. "Dearest Beauty, full of grace, your heart's as lovely as your face. You freed the prince, transformed the beast. Now all may dance at your wedding feast." They were married that very day. Everyone laughed and cried. Everyone, that is, except the sisters, who were rigid with jealousy and rage. "Dear sisters," said Beauty, "give up your jealousy and hate. Open your hearts, and my happiness can be your own." But the sisters refused, and in moments, beginning with their hearts, they turned to stone. They became 2 statues at the doors of the palace. There they stood through the years and watched as Beauty and the prince filled the palace with laughter, children, and roses. The prince and Beauty lived long and happily, and their story lives after them, and it always will, as long as there is someone to tell it and someone to listen.